one day I went, it'd be really fun to try hitting steel. And I kept bothering and bothering my parents, and around 18-ish, they said, when you graduate high school, we'll let you go get a forge and an anvil. And I went, cool. All right, this is my workshop, and this is where I end up making all of the metalwork that I do. All right, this is a forge for doing blacksmithing. Over here is just the blacksmith anvil, and that's obviously a very, very traditional tool. Something like this you use for bending metal. You would stick it in and bend it, and it acts as kind of a lever. These are swage blocks. That's where you use the negative impressions to shape the metal. Over here is the power hammer. This is what I end up using to do most of the actual physical labor of the process. It doesn't do all of it for you, but if you need to stretch metal or do indentations in it, it certainly saves your arm an awful lot of pain. All of these tools that are hanging up over here are tools that are designed specifically to go under the hammer. And what you would do is, for example, if I want to get that impression under there, I would go to the hammer, stick it in there, and step down, and that hammer hits this into the hot metal. Over here is a post vise. It's kind of like a machinist vise in the sense that it holds something, but because of the post running to the ground, it allows you to clamp metal in there, and then you can actually hammer down on it. Something like this one is my General forging hammer, and it has a very long handle relative to a hammer. And what happens is when you have a longer handle, you don't have to swing it as hard, and you get more power. And the way that a blacksmith anvil works is it bounces back. Something like this, which is rounded and a much deeper hammer, and that's used for hammering into that swage block. A hammer like this is a custom-made diagonal peen hammer, which you would hit down, and it forces the metal to go in that direction. The materials that I use come from various different places. I try, obviously, to go for locally sourced things, which ends up mainly being wood from old, we'll say structures, or that was just found in the woods or naturally occurring wood. A lot of the metal, it comes from either a new steel place like Cumberland Pipe and Steel, or every now and then I run into certain projects or certain things where people just have a lot of scrap metal. This stuff is from the Castleman River Bridge, this and this and this. And in the end, things like this get made out of it. In terms of personal aesthetic, what I like to try to do is to get a lot of motion out of the metal and try to get a lot of form and line variation out of using mostly linear elements. Metal really lends itself to being linear. So to get past that, to get past the stick figure drawing takes a lot of work. To spread the metal and create textures and patterns. Lately I've tried to get into colors of metal. I don't know if the camera will pick it up, but there's several patinas in there that I think at least bring it to another dimension of metalwork. I try really hard to take something that is traditionally thought of as a very traditional, straightforward medium and push it toward a contemporary end to create something that is not necessarily primarily based in functionality, but is more based in aesthetic. Don't do any traditional stuff these days. It wasn't something that ever struck me. It was something that seemed boring to me, and I wanted to push beyond doing that. In a sense, I could see it as part of an Appalachian tradition, purely in the sense of working with your hands and working with most of the tools out here are from the Appalachian area. They've been passed down. I picked them up at yard sales or auctions or various places, and they're still doing the work that they were intended to do. In terms of the actual work, most of the technologies used are the newer stuff is 50 to 60 years old. Most of the stuff is typical hundreds and hundreds of years. I mean, even something like that power hammer, well, that was made in the 1940s. Power hammer technology has been around ever since there was a water wheel. So thousands and thousands of years, the same techniques have been around. Beyond that, however, the aesthetic and the complete removal from traditional and functional work is kind of where the two separate, between tradition and modern art. One of the major characteristics, rather, of metalworkers is curiosity. That most metalworkers tend to go, you know what will happen if I do this? One of the hardest things of doing metalwork is just to continue to be creative. After you've done it for a certain number of years, you've experimented in every blatant thing, ooh, I wonder how to punch a hole in steel, or I wonder how to do that bend or that form. And now you have to figure out a way to continue to grow as an artist, or continue to take what is a thousands of year old tradition and make it new again. From what I've seen just in the last 5 or 6 or 7 years, it seems like people are more aware when things are handmade, and they're more appreciative of the fact that it is a handmade item and that they know the person who made it, that it will last, or they will hunt you down and you will make it last. I couldn't tell you what the initial spark was. It was just some weird innate thing that said, you want to do metalwork, just go and do it.